I'm not usually the kind of woman who shows up at her husband's office out of the blue. I believe in giving space, in letting people breathe, especially in a marriage. But that morning, something felt off. It wasn't anything obvious, just a weight in my chest, like my heart was trying to whisper something before my brain could catch up. So I decided to do something sweet. I made his favorite lemon bars, packed them with care, and tucked in a handwritten note. You are my always. I even dressed up a little. Nothing over the top, just enough to feel pretty. A soft blouse, his favorite perfume, hair done the way he likes. I wanted to see the look on his face when he realized I'd thought of him just because. No occasion, no agenda, just love. Driving over, I imagined his surprise, maybe even a hug in the hallway, something to remind us both that even after all these years, we still mattered. I rehearsed the moment in my head like a scene from one of those feel-good movies. But the moment I stepped into the building, something shifted. The receptionist, young and fresh-faced, glanced up and froze. Her smile faltered so quickly it almost slipped past me. Still holding the bag, I offered a warm grin. Hi, I'm Leon's wife. I brought him lunch. And that's when it happened. She blinked, sat up a little straighter, then blurted, Oh. Isn't he married to that other woman who came yesterday? There was a beat of silence. Not the polite kind. The kind that drops like a stone in your stomach. I stared at her, waiting for a laugh, a correction, something. But she just sat there, lips slightly parted, realizing, too late, what she'd just said out loud. I might be wrong, she stammered, already fumbling with her computer mouse. I'm new here. Maybe it was a client? Someone from HR? Her voice cracked with panic, but it didn't matter. I wasn't listening anymore. I felt my fingers tighten around the paper bag, my nails pressing into the waxy fold. Inside, lemon bars and a love note sat like relics from another life, the kind of life I thought I was living. I gave her a small, tight smile, the kind of smile you give when you're trying not to scream. No worries, I said, and turned to leave, as if I'd forgotten why I was even there. As if my heart wasn't hammering against my ribs, as if I hadn't just heard the first domino fall. I didn't ask to see him. I didn't demand answers. I walked out calmly, almost gracefully, like a woman who had everything under control. But once I reached my car, the facade started to crack. I sat behind the wheel, still gripping the bag, staring out at nothing. My breath felt shallow, like the air had thickened around me. I pulled out my phone and opened his social media. Nothing. Then his call logs. Still nothing. But that didn't settle me. If anything, it made the cold feeling in my chest sink deeper. I wasn't looking for proof. I was searching for a thread. Something to pull. Something that would make this tangled feeling inside me make sense. That's when I saw her name. Isabel. Buried in group photos from team-building retreats, tagged in congratulatory posts, laughing too hard at office birthday cakes. Always next to him. Always just close enough. I'd seen her before, of course. He'd mentioned her a few times. Brilliant analyst, bit of a workaholic, harmless. But now, her presence felt curated. I stared at a photo of them side by side during a company picnic. Leon had his arm casually slung behind her, just grazing her chair. She was mid-laugh, her hand on his shoulder. It could have meant nothing. But after that comment from the receptionist, it meant everything. My gut twisted in that way it does when you already know something, but your heart's begging you not to believe it. I closed the app. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I turned the engine on and drove home like a woman carrying glass in her chest. That night, he kissed me like normal, asked how my day was, smiled, ate dinner, told me I was his world. And I nodded, smiled back, told him I loved him too. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the same woman who had packed lemon bars that morning. I wasn't the same woman who'd walked into that office believing love alone was enough. I had a new role now, quiet observer. And if there was something to uncover, I'd find it, carefully. The next morning, I made him coffee just like always. 2 sugars, no cream. He walked into the kitchen humming some tune from the radio, kissed my cheek, and thanked me with that familiar grin. And I watched him, really watched him, for the first time in a long time. The way he moved around the kitchen, casual, predictable. A man with nothing to hide, or so it seemed. But now everything felt different. Every word he said passed through a filter I couldn't turn off. Was this love or performance? He told me he had a late meeting that night. Kissed me again and said, "Don't wait up." And I didn't. Not because I was tired, but because I was busy. Busy combing through every online thread that might lead me somewhere. I searched for Isabel on LinkedIn, scanned her posts, her tags, anything public. And I found plenty. Smiling faces at company retreats. A caption that read, "Couldn't have pulled this off without Leon." And there he was again. Inseparable. The kind of inseparable that didn't read colleagues anymore. Still, I needed more than my gut. I needed to be certain. I needed silence and precision. So I scrolled through his photos again. Not for signs of affection, but for patterns. Who commented? Who liked? Who disappeared when I showed up? And that's when a thought hit me. If I wanted answers, I couldn't keep circling from the outside. I needed to step inside his world, quietly, unnoticed. And that meant playing a role I never imagined I'd have to. I created a new LinkedIn account with a name that didn't raise alarms. No photo, just a polished job title and a fake consulting firm. It didn't take long to find someone from Leon's office, a mid-level manager who seemed friendly and chatty online. I sent a connection request, and to my surprise, it was accepted within the hour. I waited a day before starting a casual conversation. Small talk about industry trends, workplace culture, remote work versus in-person. All of it, just camouflage. Eventually, I slipped her name in. Isabel. I said it casually, like I'd heard of her through someone else. And then it happened. My contact responded with a laugh emoji and wrote, "Isabel and Leon? They're like the office married couple. Total dream team." I stared at the message for a long time, rereading it like it might change. Something in my chest clenched. Office married couple. Not a whisper of doubt, not a hint of irony. Just a fact, stated plainly. As if I didn't exist. That night, Leon came home late. He smelled like the cologne he only wore for important meetings and had a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He poured a glass of wine and told me about some project crisis. Lots of vague details, lots of names I didn't recognize. I nodded. I listened. But inside, I was cataloging, logging timestamps, noting what was said, what was avoided. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was the archivist of his unraveling. 2 days later, I checked the GPS history on his car's navigation system. It was something I'd never thought to do before. But now, curiosity had evolved into necessity. I didn't even have to look far. A handful of addresses repeated late at night, all clustered around the same apartment complex across town. I searched the building name online, and it didn't take long to cross-reference Isabel's address from a past post she'd tagged. It matched. My hands went cold before I even realized I'd stopped breathing. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, my reflection ghosting faintly in the dark glass. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was just still. Like I'd reached the eye of a storm I didn't even know I was in. Everything felt quiet, but charged. The kind of quiet right before the truth shatters everything. I had what I needed now. The dots weren't just connecting, they were shouting. And yet, I didn't rush. I didn't call him out. I didn't scream. Because some betrayals deserve more than anger. They deserve planning, precision. A reckoning so calm, so calculated, it echoes long after you've walked away. And as I stared at the last GPS ping from the night before, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. The strange thing about betrayal is how it makes you sharper. Every smile becomes suspect. Every excuse, a potential clue. I started carrying myself differently. Still loving, still warm, but with one eye open. I began waking up just a little earlier, watching him more closely in the mornings. noticing which shirts he wore on client call days, noticing how often Isabel's name danced on the edge of his stories, always positioned as an afterthought. My silence had become armor, and my patience, a weapon he couldn't see. On a quiet Tuesday morning, I crafted a message to a junior associate at Leon's firm, someone low enough not to think too hard, but close enough to the social dynamics to know the truth. I posed as a freelance writer interested in company culture, casual, curious, just a bit flattering. I mentioned Leon, then Isabel. The response came faster than I expected. Oh, those two? They're always together. Honestly, some people joke they're married. That word again. Married, like I was invisible. I thanked them politely and closed the conversation, heart pounding. The walls were closing in now, not around me, but around him. Around the lies he thought were buried under late-night meetings and inside jokes. Around the image he'd curated so carefully. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't even hurting in the same way. I was collecting, compiling, turning his narrative inside out, piece by piece. It wasn't just about what people said. It was about what they didn't realize they were revealing. The way Isabel's name always came up when Leon talked about wins at work, how he used we when describing accomplishments that had nothing to do with me. I noticed how his phone, once left casually on the counter, now traveled with him room to room, even when he showered, even when he slept. He never turned it face up anymore. I didn't need to snoop. I just needed to notice. One night while he was out meeting an old client, I sat in the garage and looked at his car. It still had that faint smell of his cologne, mixed with the coffee he always spilled but never cleaned up. I turned the GPS on just to see. The most recent destination? The same apartment complex. Again. The timestamp was 20 minutes before he'd texted me saying he was stuck in traffic. My breath didn't catch this time. No lump in my throat, just a quiet nod to the reality I now lived in. I could have confronted him. Could have thrown 1,000 truths in his face, demanded answers, forced guilt into the spotlight. But that would have been too easy for him, too impulsive for me. I wanted something else now, something that would last, something that would stay with him long after his lies had collapsed. So I took a deep breath, closed the garage door, and began planning. From the outside, I still looked like the woman who baked lemon bars and kissed her husband goodbye each morning. I still laughed at his jokes, asked about his day, played my part to perfection. But inside, I was moving differently, calculating. I had started keeping a folder, not digital, not traceable, just a plain manila one tucked inside the lining of an old purse he'd never look at. In it, I printed screenshots, photos of GPS logs, and that LinkedIn message. Facts, evidence, a slow-burning fuse. I watched him begin to relax again, thinking the storm had passed. He even planned a weekend trip for us, said he wanted to reconnect. I smiled and agreed, already knowing he'd cancel last minute. And he did. Another urgent deadline, another unexpected crisis. But I wasn't disappointed anymore. I was reassured. Every lie he told was a brick in the foundation I was laying beneath his feet. He had no idea the ground was shifting, and maybe that's what hurt the most. Not the betrayal itself, but how easy it was for him to hide it. How little he thought of me. As if I were a background character in his story. But that's the thing about background characters. They're often the ones who change everything when no one's paying attention. A month later, he came home beaming, the kind of grin that once made me feel lucky, now just made my stomach turn. I got it, he said, arms outstretched. The promotion. Finally. I hugged him, told him how proud I was, and I was proud, not of his achievement, but of how convincing I sounded. He went on about the celebration the office was planning. Employees only, he added, almost too quickly. HR's strict about it. I just smiled and said I understood, but inside I was already one step ahead. Later that night, while he dozed off on the couch, I was filling out a catering inquiry form under a fake name, just a friendly vendor offering free samples for corporate events. I chose my words carefully. Warm, professional, tempting. HR responded in 2 days. They loved the idea. Could we come in with a sample tray before the event? I said yes, of course. I had already recruited an old friend of mine who used to bartend in college. She owed me a favor, and she didn't ask many questions. The day of the party, we arrived in black slacks and crisp white button-ups, blending in with the other staff like shadows. No one looked twice. My heart beat steadily, not from nerves, but from clarity. I wasn't here to scream. I wasn't here to cry. I was here to watch, to witness. And just as I finished setting down the last tray of appetizers, I looked across the room. And there they were. He stood under those glowing pendant lights like he owned the room, laughing, shaking hands, sipping champagne. I watched from behind a polished silver tray, just another server in the background, but my eyes never left him. And then came Isabel, walking straight to him, full of confidence, in a dress I recognized from one of her Instagram stories. She slid her hand into the crook of his arm like it belonged there. No hesitation, no discretion, just possession in its most smug, subtle form. He didn't flinch. He didn't scan the room. Because of course I wasn't supposed to be there. He was free to be who he really was, not the husband who kissed me goodnight, but the man who whispered promises into someone else's hair. And then, as the speeches began, Isabel stayed at his side, clinking glasses and beaming like a proud partner. No one questioned it. No one blinked. This was their stage, their audience, their illusion. And when the VP called his name, they kissed. Not long, not vulgar, just enough. Enough to burn. Enough to tell the truth without words. I didn't gasp. I didn't drop the tray. I simply turned on my heel, reached into my apron pocket, and clicked record. Just a few seconds. That was all I needed. The cheers kept going behind me, but I was already walking toward the service exit. Calm, unseen, done. Outside, the night air hit my face like a baptism. Cool, grounding, necessary. I walked down the side alley of the building, the faint hum of celebration still echoing behind me like a party I had never truly been invited to. My friend followed a few steps behind, silent, respectful. She didn't ask what I had recorded. She didn't have to. There was something sacred in that silence. A shared understanding between women who have both, at some point, been made invisible by men who thought they were clever. When I got home, the house looked exactly as I had left it. Neat, lit warmly by the hallway lamp, still carrying the illusion of a life well lived. I took off my shoes slowly, methodically, opened my laptop, transferred the video, watched it once, then again, not for pain, but for certainty. The truth was now digital, traceable, shareable, and soon it would be in the hands of the people he worked so hard to impress. I saved the file, labeled it plainly, and stared at the blinking cursor on an empty document. Then I began writing the letter. He didn't see it coming, not when he walked through the door the next morning, loosening his tie, humming some victory tune from the night before. Not when he called out my name, expecting me to greet him with a smile and a cup of coffee. The house echoed back nothing. No footsteps, no scent of breakfast, just silence. On the kitchen counter sat a small thumb drive beside a letter, with his name typed in bold at the top. I imagine he didn't touch it right away, not out of fear, out of confusion. But he did open it. Eventually. And when he clicked play, he would have seen himself. Arms around Isabel, her lips brushing his cheek, the champagne, the applause, the betrayal, so casual, so public, so undeniable. And then, my letter, not handwritten this time. No warmth, no lipstick-stained signature, just facts, a printed record of where the video had already been sent. HR, legal, department heads, with time-stamped GPS logs and internal messages attached. A trail so clean, so irrefutable, even he couldn't spin it. I didn't need to be there to see his reaction. I could picture it easily, the shock folding into denial, then panic. Then the inevitable flood of realization that everything he'd built, the image, the reputation, the comfort of a double life, had just collapsed in on itself. And all I had to do was hit send. I didn't stay to hear his excuses. I didn't wait for the apologies or the rage or the pitiful justifications that always come too late. I had already packed what mattered, moved what was mine. The keys were left on the table. The drawers were empty. My wedding ring? Tucked inside the pocket of his suit jacket, the one he wore to the party. I figured it belonged with the costume. Let him find it when he reached for his mask again. The divorce papers had already been filed. There would be no drawn-out war, no screaming matches over who said what. I gave him what he gave me, silence and certainty. I also gave the company everything it needed to make its decision. HR didn't take long to respond. They never do when misconduct gets caught on camera. From what I've heard, through mutual contacts and whispers, his name is no longer on the website. His promotion vanished just as quickly as his illusion of control. As for me, I booked a short stay at a quiet cabin upstate. Nothing dramatic, just trees, coffee, and my own breathing. The first morning I woke up alone, I didn't cry. I didn't even miss him. I sat on the porch, wrapped in a soft blanket, and felt the peace of not having to perform anymore. The world didn't fall apart. In fact, it felt like it was finally beginning. People ask what finally broke me. The truth is, it wasn't the kiss. It wasn't even the lies. It was the moment I realized I had been edited out of my own story, replaced, redacted, quietly erased by the man who once called me his world. That kind of erasure doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow fading, like color drained from a photo. But once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you don't go back. There's power in walking away without screaming, in gathering the pieces he thought I'd never find, and placing them gently in front of the very people who once applauded him. It wasn't revenge that drove me, not really. It was reclamation of my time, my worth, my voice. He built his throne on deceit. I simply pulled out the foundation and watched him collapse. No spotlight. No spectacle. Just silence, the kind that echoes louder than any scream. Now, when I think about love, I don't picture grand gestures or handwritten notes. I picture truth, peace, a quiet kitchen where I can hum a song and mean it, a future where I'm not the other woman in someone else's story. I'm the author of my own.